Hi there. In this session, we're going to be talking about the new Gutenberg block editor in WordPress. If you've gone into WordPress in the last couple of weeks after the update to WordPress 5.0, you've probably noticed that the editing screen, the document pane here, is quite different than it used to be. So we're going to spend some time talking about the changes that have been made to the editing tools available in WordPress. One thing I want to point out right away is you're losing none of the functionality of the old classic WordPress editor from this switch from classic to the block editor. You might have to take a different path to accomplish what we were doing previously, but all the old stuff you could do in the classic editor, you can do in the block editor, and you can do a lot more things as well. So let's go ahead and get started. This is an old web page composed in the old classic editor. We know this because we have the icon up here that lets us know it's the classic editor. We also see the icon over here on the right. And if we go to this set of three dots over here in the upper left-hand corner, not to be confused with the ones in the upper right-hand corner, but the more options here in the upper left-hand corner, if I click that, allows me to convert to blocks or the block editor. You don't need to do this to all your pages, though it might be wise for you to go back and make sure all your old pages look the same, the ones that you composed in the classic editor. But to convert an old page to the new block editor, you simply click inside the block, as we did, click the More option, three dots, and then choose Convert to Blocks. And we can see at a glance that things have changed here a little bit on our document pane. I now have 4 blocks of content. My first block is my title and my permalink, which I can edit right up here using the edit button to change the slug on this permalink. My second block is the header for this page. My third block is a short piece of descriptive text, a paragraph, and my fourth block is a bulleted list. Now, whenever I click into any of these blocks, I have a set of tools in the upper left-hand corner appearing to help me out. This is context sensitive, so depending on the kind of block that I'm clicking into, the set of tools will change. Similarly, I have a set of tools over here on the right that change depending on what block I'm in. So the tools over here on the right in the upper left-hand corner will change depending on the block that I'm clicking into at any given time. So let's start looking at the tools available to us in the new block editor. We'll start here in the upper right-hand corner. Notice that I have the paragraph block selected as I'm looking at these. I get a different set of tools if I click on different blocks, but we'll start with this text paragraph block. This first icon over here, the plus, is the way to add a block, though it's certainly not the only way. So I can click this plus and I can add one of many different kinds of blocks. I can also search for a block up here that I'm looking for. In addition to adding a block here, I can also add a block by hovering just below my last one, and we'll see that same plus icon here to add a block. And if I hover between two blocks, I'll also see this add block option here. So I have an icon here, I have an icon here, and I have an icon here to add blocks. You can also simply click below your last block and start typing, and by default, you'll create a new paragraph block. I'll use this icon, the add block, and I'm going to use the YouTube. Be aware there are a ton of categories here to work from. We're going to work from embeds and YouTube, and I'll put my URL in here and click embed, and now I have an embedded YouTube video. So that's how to add a block, and we'll get into the specific kinds of blocks available to you a little later in this session. We'll again click inside the paragraph block and continue. I have an undo and redo suite of buttons right here. This gives me some insight into the content structure of my page. 54 words, 1 heading, 1 paragraph, and 4 blocks, and it tells me my title and my H2. Notice I seem to have 5 blocks here, though this says 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this first one is not so much a block. This is simply the title of the page and then the permalink. This next icon is block navigation. This is mostly useful when you have a very long page, and it just shows me all the blocks on the page. In this case, the four we just looked at: our header, our paragraph, our bulleted list, and our YouTube embed. This allows me to change the type of block or style of block I'm working with, so I can take this selected paragraph block and change it to a heading, a list, a quote, a pre-formatted block, or verse. And these next 6 icons I'm sure you're familiar with working with the classic editor, whether we're aligning left, aligning center, or aligning right, bold, italics, and a link option. If I select a word within my paragraph text, I can use this pull down, change it so it looks like code, make it a strike through, or I can add an inline image to this block using this tool. We'll talk more about adding images to these pages in a little bit. Finally, we have the 3 dots that we started with, the More Options dot. I can hide my block settings here. I can duplicate the block that I've already selected, insert a block before or after it, edit it as HTML, which we'll also talk about in a few seconds, and then add it to reusable blocks, which we'll also talk about in a few seconds. So reusable block is a block of text or text and images that you use a lot, so you can name it and then pull it into any article you're working with at any given time. Finally, you can remove a block and delete it with this command right here. So that's the upper left-hand set of tools in the new Gutenberg block editor. Let's move it over here to the right. When I click the 3 dots up here for my more tools and options, I'm first given 3 different views to work with. The top toolbar is on, and that's why all my tools appear up here in the upper left-hand corner. If I turn this off and click inside a block, my tools don't show up here in the upper left-hand corner, but just above the block. So if you'd rather have your tools right above your block, then you turn off top toolbar. I'll leave that on. Spotlight mode simply grays out those blocks that you're not working with at any given time, and the full screen mode gets rid of my navigation so I can focus on my blocks. My preferred method is to leave top toolbar on and the other ones off. This changes me between visual editor and code editor. So not that you need to go into the code to work with the block editor, but if you want to work with your HTML directly, you go to editor and code editor, and you'll see the code for your page. We'll take it off code editor and back into visual editor. And then these last few commands, the plugins, Yoast SEO is the one currently being shown for me, allows me to pull in the Yoast SEO or search engine optimization data directly into my page. We'll turn that off. Our block manager allows us to work with the items that show up on our add block list. Again, here are the categories and here are the individual block elements, and using the block manager I can turn on and off various blocks and various categories of blocks. So this is useful once you want to pare down the number of blocks available in that add block icon. Manage all reusable blocks we'll get into in a later lesson. Keyboard shortcuts is simply a list of shortcuts available here in the new block editor. And you can copy all your content on one page using this command. The options gives you a few modifications you can make on the panels that appear in your document pane. So you can add the permalink on your title block, featured image in the right-hand column, and so on. And we'll finish up this tour of the page by looking at our right column here. I have 2 options, document and block. Document refers to the entire document. Block refers to whatever block I happen to have picked here in my document at the time. Let's start with document. This is a set of tools we're already pretty familiar with. Under status and visibility, I can choose to make this public, private, or password protected. I can choose a publishing time if I want to publish this sometime in the future, and I can change the author right here. I can also move this to the trash. The permalink allows us to change the end of our URL. The slug, you can also do that up here by clicking on your title. Featured image is just that. If you want to set a featured image, this is the image most likely to show up if you share a page or someone else shares one of your pages onto social media. This will override whatever the first image is and show the featured image in social media. Discussion just has to do with allowing comments. And then page attributes we've dealt with in the old editor, where we can have various templates to base our page on, and whether we want to work with an existing parent page. If I go from document to block, the block option here in my right column allows me to manipulate whatever block I have selected here in the document pane. Here in my header block, I can change the level of header, I can change my alignment, and if I click advanced, I can add an HTML anchor. Anchors are ways to link to other pieces of content further along on the same page. I can also add additional CSS or cascading style sheets right here. If I click on my paragraph block, I can change my font size using these normal, medium, large, or huge, or I can pick a specific font size using these numbers right here. I'll reset that to its original size. I can work with a drop cap right here, which allows the first letter to be a drop cap. I can work with the color of that text, and under advanced I can add additional CSS information as well. Here in my bulleted list, I don't get a lot of options, simply other additional CSS classes to work with. And similarly here on my embed block, all I really get are additional CSS classes. There's one already picked up in here that the Gutenberg editor has already added.